Can children who are nonverbal learn to read and read well? Yes and yes. Some of my best reading students have been children who are on the more severe end of the apraxia scale, or CAS, or childhood apraxia of speech. It's almost as if they use the energy that they would have used struggling to speak and instead laser it on reading. I've seen them do extremely well. But how do we teach reading to a child who's nonverbal? The same exact way we teach reading to a child who is verbal. The teaching is the same, the testing is different. So how do we test? And how do we prove that a child who's nonverbal is actually reading? Here are 3 ways I recommend. First, if the child has some verbal ability and can make approximate sounds, as she's reading along, if she gives a consistent sound for a certain word every time she sees it, then I always accept that as actually reading that word. Even if to us, to our ears, that sound isn't even close to the word, it doesn't matter. If it's consistent every time she sees the word pizza, for example, if she's making the same sound, that's perfectly fine. A second way is if the child has been taught SEE or ASL, then of course she can sign. And a third way, if you're working with a sentence, for example, a great tool to use is a sentence strip. You make small cards for each of the words, and then you use a strip of paper. I use red, a long red strip, because that's more appealing to the child and it really shows up the words well. So you scramble the words in front of her, and then you speak the sentence, and you ask her to choose the right word as you go along in the sentence, and she lines them up on the sentence strip. That works really well. So your next step is, how are you going to prove to the school and the classroom that your child is indeed reading? Because our kids are not fond of performing on demand at school, and we all know that. So I suggest you video her at home, tape her at home, performing in one of those ways when she's comfortable and she feels like cooperating, and then send that into the classroom, send that to the teacher, and make sure it's viewed. And this is very important, that the teacher actually knows the real reading ability of your child. Because as many of us have found out, the classroom is likely to assume that if the child can't speak, the child is also not very bright. And trust me, some of my students with severe apraxia are super sharp cookies. So on the next slide, I give you some homework that'll give you some more tips on this nonverbal reading, and see you next time.